Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that in case I say something controversial, I would sit in one of the front row seats, and it might be one of the last times I'm invited back here. So I really appreciate the time, and I know we want to get you all on schedule because this is an incredibly significant event and an incredibly significant institution. And I just wanted to say just a couple of quick things. One is to my friend Tony Segreto. Now, we said this beforehand, okay? Now, I've seen you for 50 some odd years, and I've sat in front of my TV and tolerated you for 30 minutes. You're going to sit here and tolerate me for 30 minutes, just so you understand, okay? That's A. And B, which is really important, I wanted to tell you that this has been kind of a lifelong culmination for me. I grew up on Miami Beach. And I looked at the spot that the Miami Arena would be at in the first place. So let's take it back to 1966. The last time I saw my dad, he died of melanoma. It was kind of quick. And the Dolphins expansion award had just been signed. They were going to play that September. I remember vividly sitting in a hospital room thinking about the expansion draft picks that the then Miami Dolphins were taking, Joe Auer and Willie West and Westmoreland. A few of those guys were just names to the most intense Dolphin trivia buffs. And I remember getting these season tickets from my dad, who said, we'll go together. Of course, he knew at the time he wouldn't make it. And I remember in September of that year, Joe Auer running back the opening kickoff for the Miami Dolphins, those 90 yards. And we realized at that point, this was our first foray in professional sports. And I didn't know it then, but I was going to then embark on what was 45 years of kind of misery, excitement, and a whole bunch of other stuff all rolled up in one. And I also remember, and Tony remembers, and some of the old-time friends here remember, that we were promised a franchise by Mel Blum with a super-duper downtown Miami Beach baseball stadium that would blow everybody away. Then we had a press conference where Bernie Parent was signed as the goaltender of the Miami Screaming Eagles. And it was held at the airport. The only problem was there was only one wall for an arena that was never funded. I remember vividly being personally involved in 11 failures with 13 sports authorities, with 215 elected officials appointing 638 appointed officials. And Jerry Bernfeld, who succeeded me at the Miami Sports and Exhibition Authority, remembers that I was fired 8 or 9 times by people who wanted to do us in and said we would never get an arena done. And so I could tell you chapter and verse about all of that stuff. I could say, spend the money to buy the book. That's not why I'm here. But it is interesting that when you emerge from some of this, you understand that this all is one of those kind of life lessons you learn. I remember going to law school, finishing up my 3rd year at Harvard Law, writing a thesis on hockey fighting, coming back and saying, I want to do something in sports law and sports business. Well, there was no St. Thomas school like this, and there were no curricula that could kind of define this. So we said, all right, what are we going to try to do? Well, Nick Bonaconte, the Miami Dolphin middle linebacker and lawyer, and I worked together. And I remember my first meeting with Joe Robbie. And I went into his office and said, we're going to work together and work with you to build you a stadium. And he said, all right, you look like the kind of guy I can work with, parentheses, you look like the kind of guy I can control. So let's see if we can develop a business deal. You get $9,000 and we'll put together a full-time deal. And I said, wow, $9,000 a month, that's going to be $108,000 a year, that's going to be fine. He said, no, not $9,000 a year. I said, all right, well, how about you want French fries with that? Because I can go down to McDonald's and flip burgers and get even more. But you know what? I went back to my wife and I said, I might be a little poorer because I'm going to quit that job at the law firm that would have paid $45 and I'm going to take $9, but you're going to be happier because I'm going to be happier. Well, she bought it, and I can tell you that through all of those various sports authorities, did we go to the right site? Was it going to be baseball? Was it going to be Dome? I could get you the chapter and verse with all of that, but here's the bottom line. There have been 48 million tickets sold for sports events in the last 20 years. We went from a town that couldn't do anything to 3 arenas, 1 spring training and another one, a Homestead Raceway, tennis complexes, Key Biscayne and otherwise, multi-purpose football and baseball stadiums, a new baseball stadium, people now wanting the 3rd renovation on a football stadium as opposed to just getting one done, 4 teams, FIU, obviously St. Thomas, FAU, the whole region, multiple regional sports councils, and 2 and 9 and now 10 Super Bowls, an NHL and an NBA All-Star game. And so, you know, we've really, I think, done a pretty good job from the community that couldn't. And really, we also have a problem with building facilities. The economy's gone to hell. Nobody's going to do anything. We can't find jobs in the sports market. Well, that's not how I see it. $7 billion for major league facilities open this year, more than the previous 5 years combined, nationally. This year alone, we have nearly $1 billion for college stadiums, $3 billion for minor league stadiums, $1 billion for arenas, and some are delayed, some are scaled down. But the bottom line is we have the ability and the appetite to move forward in this industry, and sports is a big business. It's a $750 billion business. And a shameless plug for a new book that's being released in about 3 weeks, and during the Super Bowl, we're going to get behind all of those business issues, and also people who are tired of reading book 1, you have a chance to fall asleep reading book 2. So I would tell you that the goal of this whole kind of exercise is to take away strong business principles as they apply to sports. I don't need to tell you and the people who are here how important the whole area of business and sports really is. But I have 10 principles that we call the Horrow principles that kind of guide at least my work through the sports business. There are 10. I only ate the first course. I only have half the books, so you're only going to get 5 today, right? So here are the 5. Plus I want to stay on track. My 5 big principles for how to succeed in this environment. Number 1, be proactive at the moment of highest risk. Or, let's call it, get up off the canvas and do important things at the hardest time to do them. Now, I don't know if we call this a depression, a recession. I know we've got some of the finest minds in finance in the world here. But I will tell you this, that this is the time that we're all wanting to or needing to do some things that are very important. We're going to hear President Obama tonight talk about jobs. You believe or you don't believe his message, but the important thing was that we attempted to do something last year, $800 billion of stimulus. It's called the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Did we spend it on pork? Did we spend it right? Did we not? Where are we going with it? Well, let's bring it home. Let's talk about the economic impact of a stadium today. Now, I'm not a shameless plug for the Dolphins or Sun Life, Joe Robbie Stadium, Pro Player Park, Pro Player Stadium. You know, who knows what it's going to be called tomorrow. But I will say that the controversy that's clogging the airwaves locally and maybe nationally is, should we do a renovation? Is it important to us? How do we do it? What's the process? Well, all I can tell you is that in the 1930s, President Roosevelt, after the Hoover administration, wanted to figure out how to kickstart the economy. And he did a lot of different things. And one of the things he did was to create an organization that developed the WPA. And guess what? The WPA said, how do we develop jobs? Well, one of the ways to do it is to develop infrastructure and expand it. Guess what? The Hall of Fame Stadium in Cooperstown, 15 other stadiums worth $2.5 billion if done today were allocated in the 1930s by the WPA to get us going again. One of the stadiums that did exist and not anymore, guess what? It was the Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl was built as a WPA project. And I'm not even going to get into whether you need this size roof, that size roof, and what kind of renovation plan works. I will say that when you're proactive at the moment of highest risk, one of the biggest issues you focus on is how to stimulate jobs in the economy. And if you take the NFL at its word as far as future Super Bowls after New Orleans in 2013, and not debate whether they mean it, but take it at its word what they say, then one of the big priorities for the community is to have the debate over whether these expenditures are an important way to move forward. And I would tell you that, again, this is not a Dolphin initiative as much as it's NFL initiative. There are competition all over. I understand that LA is looking to get its stadium done, which impacts San Diego and San Francisco. I was just up doing my Sports Take show, which will be part of next week's at the Meadowlands. Mark Lamping, who runs the Meadowlands, and I was scoffing at, well, your competition is Miami, but you want the Super Bowl in 2014, but it's freezing here today. He made a really good case for a one-time, one-shot 2014 celebration of the New York scene at the Meadowlands. I'm not saying that should be where it is. All I'm saying is there's really stiff competition out there, and that's one of the issues that needs to be considered. So, to be proactive at the moment of highest risk or get up off the canvas means engage in a quick, important community debate over that particular project, I would argue. Number two, always do things a certain way unless you don't. Or be bold and maintain the courage of your convictions, but be flexible enough to adapt to the circumstances. What do I mean? Well, look, Lee Iacocca was the father of the Ford Mustang. He preserved the Statue of Liberty. He did a joint Lead Now campaign to cure diabetes. And by the way, most of that after he was 80 years old. The France family took a sleepy southern sport in the 1960s and 70s to a $6 billion business and a 90% growth rate. The name of the game has always been about revenue, directly or indirectly. How to make it, how to save it, how to get fans to enjoy themselves and return and spend it. 20 years ago, for example, we charged people premiums for seats. Joe Robbie's idea, great idea, called PSLs. 15 years ago, we asked concession companies to pay upfront for rights fees. 10 years ago, we factored in corporate naming of buildings, plazas, fields, kiosks, entrances, and the kitchen sinks into our pro formas. 5 years ago, we started calling ticket scalping, ticket reselling, and redistribution, terms you're going to hear a lot over the next 10 days. By the way, I've been here 40 minutes. I've already gotten about 30 requests for Super Bowl tickets. I don't have any. I don't have any Super Bowl tickets. I'm sorry. Tony does. Ask Tony Segreto. He has hundreds of... Rodney does. Rodney does, right? Bruce does. Bruce does. Anyway, 5 years ago, we started validating the whole ticket redistribution and reselling as an effort to maximize revenue. So now what's the key? Well, the key to future trend involves forming meaningful technology partnerships that last for the life of the building and well beyond, and also to factor in integration of a business deal with a community and the team into future spending habits. And this is really a call out to the Marlins. We got the stadium done, it's the right location, it's the wrong location, doesn't really matter. The point is, we're looking forward to its opening. So now the challenge is to make sure it is the absolute state-of-the-art facility, so there's no more excuse about whether it's the stadium that causes people not to go or go to baseball games in South Florida. And then B is to make sure that Marlins continue to spend money responsibly. I believe the spending on the payroll for pitchers is great. The deal they did with the Players Association to ensure a salary floor is great. All of those are important to demonstrate support for a public-private partnership that does not end when the bonds are sold. And I would challenge the Marlins to continue on that road. Number 3, bring strangers, even enemies, to the table. New York wanted to bring the Olympics to their city in 2012. London wanted the same thing. They had Olympics in 1908 and 1948. Their 2012 bid represented $15 billion in infrastructure, $11 billion in transportation, the royal family being involved, trust, and teamwork. They got it. New York didn't. All-star games are a little more boring than regular season. Let's see what the Pro Bowl does for us. But the point is that it's not a team, it's a bunch of individuals. The Mara family, good example. Years ago, they took the initiative in saying to the rest of the NFL, let's share revenue because we're only as strong as our weakest link. So television revenue should be distributed equally, whether it's Green Bay or New York. So here's my point. The way to do deals is to be inclusive, not exclusive. This is now our 10th Super Bowl. Rodney Barreto has done a great job of teeing up this entire region. This is not a Miami Super Bowl or a Fort Lauderdale Super Bowl. We all understand that. I will tell you that 9 million leather helmet years ago, when I was running the Sports Authority, candidly, it was a question of whether it was Miami, Dade, Broward. We were actually talking about putting the 50-yard line on the county line. Of course, Marino or others would have problems with that because that would cause receivers looking into the sun. Irrelevant. It was a political issue, not a football issue. So what? Well, it didn't happen. But the point is, Palm Beach County was not included in that debate. They talked a lot about it, but they never really did. And I do think that it's very important to respect the fact that this is a 4.5, 5 million person region. And the more people treat it like that, the better for everybody. This is clearly a step in the right direction, and it's a large step that's been incrementally more significant than the first 9 Super Bowls. And, kudos to everybody, Rodney and others, to make it happen. So it's important to bring strangers, and in many cases, even enemies to the table. Number 4, the 7-minute rule. Now, for me, that's a hard rule to follow because I never say anything in 7 minutes. I'm probably the most long-winded person you know, but you got to sit here and be polite and eat and take it. But the bottom line is that NFL teams script out their first 15 plays. Like a pilot, you need a flight plan, and you've got to be disciplined in how you present something. Personal anecdote, it was 1997, and I was involved in trying to take advantage of a Paul Tagliabue introduction to the France family to have me captain their public-private partnership process for NASCAR racing, except for one thing. I grew up in Miami. Daytona is 4.5 hours away, never saw a race. So what I could have done is to say, I know every one of these drivers, who their right front jackman or tire changer is, who is what his blood type is, and try to be conversant in everything NASCAR. Well, as Tony and others know, I'm pretty good at faking it, but after a certain level, people understand that's not the right answer. Or I could have done, I don't know NASCAR, but I do know economic impact, and all the stadiums we've done in the past show $600 to $800 million of economic impact with a couple of races. The difference is, Super Bowls come every year, and they don't come to the same place. You have the chance to bring in substantial economic impact with 1 or 2 races every year, which rival a Super Bowl, but you can guarantee it twice. End up doing a deal, public money in Kansas, public-private partnership in Chicago, and I would also tell you that Homestead is a great venue for the end-of-the-year race. And I'm not here to make this commitment, but I do know the France family very well, and as long as we mind the store in Homestead, we should look for future commitments of public-private year-ending NASCAR race partnerships there. And when you look at the economic engine, don't be fooled by the fact that that's 45, 50 miles south of downtown Miami. It is an incredibly important economic nugget for you to keep. Final tip or wisdom, which helps me every day. Don't take criticism personally and get up off the canvas. The 1972 Miami Dolphins are a testament to this, and I was honored to spend an hour interviewing Don Shula and his retrospective on that and his team that Gary Apremian almost undid, which is another issue. But I will tell you that the important pursuit of perfection is to make sure that consistency is the virtue. And I asked Don Shula what he thought was the most important word to guide his captaincy of that team. And he didn't say perfection. He didn't say find the flashy player like Mercury Morris who could break tackles. He said consistency, resiliency, preparation, but consistency. And for example, it is interesting to know that Babe Ruth set all those home run records, but you realize that he has the unchallenged year strikeout record, struck out more than anybody else for 5 years in a row. Kind of interesting. So the bottom line of all of this is keep hammering away, keep chopping wood to take a sports metaphor, and don't take criticism personally. So the final story on this is that I grew up in South Florida. I do this Miami Sports Authority. We do the public-private partnership on the arena. I don't know whether I'm going to be approved or not because the Miami City Commission votes in Spanish, and I don't know for 3 days whether I get it or not. So finally, there are people shaking their head up and down, and I'm saying, all right, so looks like we're done. So I end up going to a meeting to make sure we finalize the deal. And Lou Chappelle and the old names of the past. Here we go, Zeb Buffman, Billy Cunningham, I see Billy on a regular basis, by the way. And the quid pro quo I've got from Billy, so you know, is we both live up in the north part of this area, Jupiter, Florida. And I saw our families were buying Christmas trees together, and he said to me, "You made me a lot of money. We all work together, but I got this equity interest." And I said, "All right, I don't need any of that. I just need you to buy me a Christmas tree every year." So every December 21st, we show up together, by the way, at that Christmas tree place, and he buys me a tree, which is great. Anyway, so Billy Cunningham, Chaffel, Zev Buffman, and the bottom line at that point, as you remember, was Mickey's father, Ted Arison. Now, those of you youngsters here probably don't know the entrepreneurial and civic spirit of Ted Arison, but he was the one who basically said, "I know nothing about basketball. I remember playing it in Israel when I was growing up. But if it's important to bring to South Florida, I'll do it." We had a first meeting with David Stern that April. And David Stern, the NBA commissioner, was pretty hard and fast about what the deal was going to be. And as you might expect, this was a huge, multilingual, multi-political cat-herding exercise to get everybody together on one deal in one arena, not enough money, but one arena to then move the process forward. And Ted Arison on April 13th of that year, and Zev Buffman and Billy Cunningham and David Stern and I were in this meeting. And to these people, they could go back to their lives, but I had, you know, disdained normal civility and law to try to get this deal done, and this was it. There was no plan B, as anybody would say. So David Stern sits there and says, "Ted, respectively, price is $32.52 million, because that's what we're charging Minnesota, and that's what we're charging Orlando, and that's what we're charging Charlotte." And if you remember, there was a deadline of 3 franchises that would make the league even at that point, and that's the way we were going to do it. And this was our meeting to see where we were going to go. And Ted Arison leaves. I mean, we had the whole plan rehearsed. We had the video boards. We had the equivalent of the 1980s PowerPoint presentation. It was in color. Here was the arena. Here was nobody on the street. Here was a crime-free downtown Miami, to tell you how we suspend reality. And it was like, all right, here it is. And David Stern is saying, "I'm ready to give you a franchise." By the way, Gary Bettman, who's the NHL commissioner, was the number 3 at the NBA at that time. So we were all orchestrating this. And Gary had written a story how Cubans love basketball. This is a 4 million person market. We're all working well together. So Ted leaves. And we're all sitting there, and I start a "how's the weather" conversation. David looks at me like, you know, shut up and just let's see what happens. So 15 minutes later, longest 15 minutes of my life, he says, Ted comes back. I don't know where it was, by the way, he wouldn't tell me. I don't know, he comes back and he says, "Well, Mr. Commissioner, I've done a lot of soul searching, and for me, 15 minutes is a lot of soul searching. And what I did is I went across 5th Avenue to the store that sells NBA franchises, the other one, to see if I could cut a better deal. And then I realized there is no store that sells NBA franchises. So for me to do this deal, I have to get on my knees and do a deal for $32.5 million, which makes no sense, but all of these people and people in Miami depend on me." At which point, he took out his checkbook, $32 million, here's the signature, David Stern and Ted Arison shook hands, and that's how the Miami Heat was born, and that's basically how a lot of the South Florida franchises grew from that. Now, my point is, 15 minutes was 15 hours, and if you took that as a negative, and if you didn't build on all of the failures that have come before that, all the prior votes, all the 11 failed arenas that we all as Miami veterans know, and you stopped at any one point in that journey, it would be, we didn't get to that point. And the way to deal with it is don't take criticism personally, constantly get off the canvas, and put it at the point of that magic moment where a deal could happen, because at that point, great things happen beyond that. So, kind of in conclusion, what's the legacy? What do you want to be remembered as? Well, to me, it's, you know, good dad, developing good values, helping the community move this along, and also your own personal Hall of Fame. How do you want to be remembered in putting these business deals together, and where does the community sit in all of that? To me, we've passed the point of using sports as a lever to generate business. We're now at the point way, way beyond that. But it began with a whole number of smaller steps, and truly, those business principles have guided my life, and I feel in many ways it's come full circle to be able to speak to this audience because of what you've done and how you've moved forward. I'm here to help in any way I possibly can, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm, you know, as many questions as you want. We got time for it. So, you know, step up, yell, call. And this was rare because I usually go on and on and on, but I wanted to make sure you guys could. Yes, sir. Everybody know what American Eagle is? It's interesting. The question is, there was a case that was heard by the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago, and the case involves a retail company, a cap company, who wanted to do a deal with a couple of the NFL teams. And the NFL said, you know, you got to do a deal with us, the league, or not at all. And of course, that's the way television is done, that's the way scheduling is done. A league can't schedule just one team, or there's going to be chaos. There's a national responsibility. Some things are done nationally, and as we all know, as business people here, some deals are left for a local team to generate sponsorship or not. So American Needle is a sweeping evaluation by the court on whether the NFL is a single entity and should do business as a single entity. And of course, the ruling could be that all of the leagues have to do business as single entities, which would ruin professional sports, in my opinion. The ruling most likely will be that there will be some small change in the way business is done, or not at all, and the companies that do business with the leagues will be told that here are the ground rules for leagues and teams, and if you don't like it, that's the way it is. That's my prediction. Now, I will also tell you, as you remember, that I spent 2 years watching games and drinking and eating with the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court as my roommate. So even if I knew how people were thinking, I sure as hell wouldn't tell you. Jerry, you have any questions about the way things used to be and how it was so much better back then? Jerry Bernfeld, how long were you the director of the Sports Authority? Yes. Number of years. Didn't have white hair. A lot of us didn't have white hair back then. Any other questions? Super Bowl, Marlins, national trends, sports business, how to get into the sports business today, whether it's a field that's drying up. Look, I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate your time, and I know you're about to get onto other things, so thank you very much.